What is up, good people? Jungle Link here. Hope you're doing well. We got some great stuff to go over today. We're going to hear from Chris Larsen. He believes that Vice President Harris is the best candidate for the crypto space. Contrarian opinion, but we'll hear his side of things. Paul Tudor Jones, if you remember him, very famous investor, one of the first to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon. He's got some really scary forecasts for the U.S. financial system. It's on the brink. Major problems, and that all ties into his investments in both gold and crypto. We'll hear from him. And lastly, Raoul Pal. He believes that Ethereum will underperform this cycle. It's not all doom and gloom for the blockchain, but I think he has some interesting perspective we should listen to. Now, before we get into all this, let's go down the checklist here. Make sure you like, but more importantly, make sure you subscribe. That helps this channel so much. It helps increase its reach and success, and I really appreciate every subscriber. And lastly, if you take the time out of your day to comment, I will respond to each and every comment. I really appreciate your input and your participation. All right, before we get into Chris Larsen, let's hear from John Reed Stark. He's former head of SEC enforcement. He's a Democrat himself, and he's going to give you his worldview. What will life look like for the crypto industry under a Democrat regime versus a Republican regime? Let's see what he has to say.
Whether the SEC is going to keep on bringing these cases. And the answer is, so long as the Democrats are in charge of the SEC, because it's become kind of a partisan issue, the SEC's crypto onslaught will continue on every front. There'll be no regulatory relief. There'll be no slowing down of enforcement actions. There'll be appeals. There'll be aggressive cases. There'll be all sorts of joint work with the FBI, who have their own crypto unit. The good news for the crypto enthusiasts is that because the issues become so partisan, what's going to happen is that if a Republican gets elected, there'll be a complete reversal, I think, of just about all that, except for the more egregious cases of fraud. But as far as regulatory pronouncements, when it comes to whether Coinbase, Binance, and Bixi, and Bittrex, and all these crypto intermediaries are acting as broker-dealers or exchanges or clearing firms, those sort of cases are going to stop if a Republican gets elected.
Now, I don't know about you, but as a crypto enthusiast, that sounds like a dream scenario. We don't need the SEC suing Coinbase and Binance and, Kraken and all these exchanges. If the U.S. wants to regulate this space, the trade of commodities specific to cryptocurrencies, they need to write those laws. And I think they should do that to some extent. I think investors in cryptocurrencies would like to get more reliable information that we could, research and really make a more informed investment. But to do that, you have to pass those laws. And they have to be sensible laws so you're not killing the industry here in the U.S. You allow it to flourish. But if they do it right, you're going to see a lot of money come pouring into this space. And it can be done right. But just harassing people to slow them down all along the way until we get there, to me, is not productive. We're going to hear from Chris Larsen here. And we're going to get his side of the story. Of course, he's talked to the Harris campaign. A lot of people he believes will be in her administration and kind of what this may look like. Again, that's just John Reed Stark's opinion. We'll hear the flip side of the coin here from Chris Larsen.
Now, new federal election filings this week show that you've given nearly $12 million, mostly in XRP, to the Harris campaign. Why are you throwing your weight behind the vice president?
Well, we're really excited by her economic message. It is a message now of pro-innovation and making sure that, our American champions dominate, their industries around the world. So I'm excited about that. I think the Harris, administration, look, their DNA is from, the world capital of innovation right here in the Bay Area, that the place that's created more trillion-dollar companies than any place on the planet. She gets that. She grew up here. She knows people that founded these companies. So I'm just really, really confident that this is going to be a completely different approach than I think I'll just say it, the failed policy that the Biden administration brought when it came to crypto and digital assets. Because frankly, I think they just weren't paying attention, and they sort of outsourced it Senator Warren, and it was a disaster. But that is not going to be how the Harris campaign approaches this. I'm extremely confident in that.
I'll tell you this, I don't think this is as much of a business decision because you do get a lot more bang for your buck for those contributions to the congressional candidates. And that's why you see Ripple, $50 million spreading it on both sides of the aisle, because that's going to have the biggest impact. At the end of the day, I think this is more personal for Chris Larsen, which is his right. Look, it's his own funds. It's not company funds. And I think he's just really supporting the candidate that aligns with his worldview and he thinks will be best. Now, that's just my opinion, but that's the way I see it here. If he wanted to put that, almost $13 million to its highest and best use, probably would have went to congressional candidates, again, on both sides, because you don't want to make this a partisan issue. You don't want to make enemies. Of course, we want to work with everyone. That's the way politics work, right? You spread the money around as an industry. But again, I think there's a little more to it than that with Chris Larsen. This is just a personal contribution in a lot of ways, and I think he has to defend that. Or at least he feels like he has to defend that. And just instead of saying, I'm giving it to the candidate that I think is overall the best, at least in his mind.
Now, all in, the crypto industry has raised around $218 million. A lot of that money has actually gone to down ballot races as the sector looks to build a Congress that will vote through favorable laws. Why has your personal donation focus been more on the White House versus potentially trying to target some of these House and Senate races that will decide the composition of what Capitol Hill looks like?
Yeah, well, actually, we've been major contributors to Fair Shake, which is the super PAC that has been targeting congressional races, the down ballot races. But Fair Shake made a decision they were not going to get involved in the presidential election. So I think that kind of left that wide open in a more ad hoc fashion, if you will. And, again, what I saw was kind of all the donations going on the Republican side, which is fine. I get it. They've been very pro crypto. But again, the Harris administration has also made it very clear this is going to be a very different approach. It's going to be a reset. And I think it's actually good for the industry to have that bipartisan support and weight. And kind of what I did there now kind of equals that out in the same way that Fair Shake has spent equally on Dems and Republicans who are pro-crypto.
Now, part of
where he's talking about all this money going to the Republican side, that's very abnormal. When we're talking about tech companies, when we're talking about, especially crypto companies, like most of these are all going to be Democrats at their core, especially the executives, the people with big money. But they're doing it because of what John Reed Stark had said. Really, at the end of the day, though, Harris has all the money. She has so much, it's ridiculous. This 10 or 12 million didn't do a whole lot. But I think it can long-term kind of be like, the space is supporting both sides. There could be some strategy is what I'm saying here to what he did. So you're not trying to burn bridges or make enemies. And again, this is all a game with politics. You want to make sure you're greasing the right pockets. So no matter what, you're covered. I don't think that's why he did it, but it could work out that way. And again, it's his own personal funds, and he should support whoever he wants, even if from a business standpoint, it may not make a lot of sense.
what made Donald Trump so popular with the crypto industry was his promise to fire SEC Chair Gensler. Now, we know that he can only unseat him from the chairman seat, but still that remains one of Trump's stickiest talking points. Ripple obviously has been battling the SEC for years now. You're in the process of countersuing the commission. Do you think that Harris would also displace Gensler from that role?
Well, look, let me just say, I think Gary Gensler has been the worst public servant that we've ever had in this country. It's been incredibly damaging to this country. But look, I think we need to be really thoughtful here. I look at what sort of Reid Hoffman said about Lena Khan. He's a big contributor to the Dems. He said Lena Khan needs to go. That's spectacularly backfired, right? If anything, that probably ensures Lena Khan stays in that role. And, we could argue, the things that she's done, some good, some bad. But I'm not going to empower Gary Gensler to have any excuse, on what happens with his future. So I'm not going to comment on that. And I don't think donors should be getting involved in things like that, right? We're supporting the candidate. We're supporting her core values. And it is, her leadership that is going to, have to make decisions like that.
I think President Biden inherently is an anti-crypto. crypto's kind of fringe, and it's going to go off to the Elizabeth Warren type of people to manage. And that's really the problem. I'm not convinced under a Harris administration you're not going to get Elizabeth Warren in charge of the SEC chairman. And I don't know that Gary Gensler is all that bad. He's just taking his marching orders. He's doing a job just like we do. And it all comes from her on down the line. She writes his questions, his answers. You know, he's just her puppet. Is that really going to change here? You know, probably not. But not the biggest fan of Chris Larsen, but his company sure did spend a lot of money in these elections. $50 million pro-crypto candidates. That's going to pay dividends. His company fought a very important battle against the SEC that also will benefit all of cryptocurrencies because they got that big win. And they proved that these tokens in their own rights are not securities. They fought for it. They won. That's big for all of cryptocurrencies. So he's done a lot of good in this area. And again, I think he's just making a personal donation to the candidate that he thinks is best and meets his worldview, which is absolutely his right. It's his money. It is what it is. All right, Paul Tudor Jones. I thought this was really interesting. Again, very famous investor. He's just kind of looking at the outlook of everything. And he's saying what we have to do just to get, you know, what we're spending to kind of even here. So we're not adding to the deficit. And I want you to hear what he says needs to be done. Things like bring the top tax bracket to 50%. Bring the corporate tax bracket to 25%. A jump up from where it is now. Historically not that high. You know, he's going to go through a whole laundry list of stuff that I can guarantee they're not going to do. And that's just to kind of bring things to even. Since they're not going to do that, you know, where do we end up here? Because no candidate's going to say, I'm going to tax the daylights out of you. I mean, he's talking about an extra 1% in payroll tax to everyone, no matter how much money you make. These are the kind of extreme moves we really need to do. And he also states, you know what, there's only one way out of this. And they're going to tell you they want to bring down inflation. They can't. It's going to be to inflate your way out of this, if you can even do so. Interesting interview. Let's hear what he has to say here.
Let's talk about taxes, though.
Okay.
Because that's how the money is going to get raised.
Correct.
One way or the other.
Correct.
I think we have a screen, if we could, that puts up a little bit of a menu here.
Yes.
Of, I don't know if it's options. Actually, they may not be options
No,
at all.
there are plenty of options. There are plenty of
but
options.
there's not many ways to get where you need to go unless you start to do some of these things.
Correct.
Maybe. So the question is, of what's on the screen, you can let the tax cuts expire. That gets you
Look, can I just say
billion.
this?
Yep.
You have to let the tax cuts expire.
You have to.
You have to let those expire. That's $390 billion. We're going to have, again, we're gonna be broke really quickly unless we get serious about dealing with our spending issues, and unless we can either. I don't know if we'll be able to cut spending that much. 60% of our spending are transfer payments.
But if you think we're going broke, and you think Trump is going to be the president, he's not going to let those tax cuts expire if he can avoid it.
The thing
He does not want the corporate tax rate to go to 25%, as you're suggesting it'll have to. He's suggesting it should go to 15%.
I'm saying that just to get us to the point where we stabilize debt to GDP at where it is right now, here's what you need to do. You need to let the Trump tax cuts expire. That's $390 billion. You need to raise the payroll tax on every single working person, 1%. That's another big slug. You need to...
What do you think that does to jobs?
We're clearly going to have a period of contraction, which hopefully, that's why I was going to say, it's...
First of all, this ain't good. We're going to go through a period of contraction. Bad, bad, bad. Raise payroll taxes on everyone of every income level. You're going to have to let the Trump tax cuts expire, which are massive. You're going to have to raise the top rate to 49.5%. This is what he's calculating is pretty much our options here. Can you imagine if you ran on that ticket and you told people, when I become president, this is what I'm going to do? You ain't getting elected. No one is going to elect you to do that. And this ain't going to happen either, by the way. We know better than that. Maybe rates go up a little bit. They do some stuff, play some games. But what they're going to do is they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road as long as they can. Eventually, you're going to run out of road. We know that. You can't do this forever. But it just shows you we're in a really bad spot here.
It's going to be really important for the Fed to be able to offset the fiscal contraction area that's going to come.
Then you want to increase the individual tax rate all the way to the top rate of close to 50%.
No, hold it.
Yep.
I don't want to do any of this stuff. What I'm telling you is that we've got to be serious about where we are fiscally. And so I'm giving you, there's a whole set of options, right? We could go in and cut 25% of the federal workforce. Some people may do that. There's a website where you can go look and play with all the options. You can raise the capital gains rate from 21 to 28%. That only gets you $10 billion a year. It actually doesn't get you what you need. So I'm simply showing some of the things that you can do. Yes, you'd have to raise the tax rate on the top, I think probably everyone over 200 grand, probably have to raise that to 49.5%. If you do.
And that sounds high. If you're making 200 grand, they had this chart the other day. What you need if you're starting out life in different states, just to have kind of what you would call the American dream. Small house, couple kids, a dog. We're not talking about balling out of control. Here in California where I am, that number is you have to make at least $279,000. But the scary part is this. When you want to cross the United States, because of inflation and because housing prices have gone up so much and everything else, there was no state where that number was really low or significantly cheap. So, raising the taxes significantly on any household making 200 grand, these aren't big numbers. And they definitely are not as big as they would have been a few years ago.
Do all these things. Raise the Social Security from 65 to 70. If you do all these things, means test, Medicare, if you do all these things, all you do is you get to a primary balance. What that means is you stabilize debt to GDP. You're still actually increasing your debt.
Right.
You're still actually increasing it because it excludes the interest costs, which, oh, by the way, the interest bill this year is larger than every single line item except Social Security. It's larger than defense spending. Larger.
Think about this for a second. So all this stuff he's saying, this extreme stuff, 49.5% top tax bracket, get rid of all the tax cuts, raise the corporate rate 1% on all workers, and you're still going to be adding to the deficit because of the interest you're paying on the current debt. How are we ever going to get? It's just unrealistic. We ain't going to get there. There's going to be some significant turmoil in the future. The only question is, how far can they keep kicking that can down the road until it's time to pay up? The day will come. We just don't know when. And this ain't going to happen what he's saying. This is what someone sensible would do. Someone would do like if you were running your household. Oh, no, we're running a little bit over income. We need to cut back. We need to do this and that. This ain't happening, which tells us, there's going to be a collapse at some point.
Larger than Medicare.
I want to talk about why you're here, which is Robinhood and this conference. But before I do that, given all of the things you're saying, are you off buying gold and Bitcoin and hiding somewhere?
I think all roads lead to inflation. We're going to end up, but does all roads lead to inflation? Therefore, gold is a good investment. Is Bitcoin a good investment to you? I'm long gold. I'm long Bitcoin. I think commodities are so ridiculously underowned. So I'm long commodities. I think most young people find their inflation hedges via the NASDAQ. That's also been great. It's probably some combination. I probably have some basket of gold, Bitcoin, commodities, and NASDAQ, something like that. And I would own zero fixed income. If I had my cash, it'd be very short term. The playbook to get out of this, you see it in Japan right now. They have 2% inflation, 30 basis points overnight. They don't want to raise rates. The playbook to get out of this is that you inflate your way out, and you have a small tax on the consumer, and you run interest rates and nominal growth rate, interest rates below inflation and nominal growth above inflation. And that's how you reduce your debt to GDP. So you're going to have the Fed they should be easy. They should be
easy. You want them to cut.
So just real quickly, every 100 basis points, given where our debt to GDP right now, every 100 basis points is worth about $90 billion a year to the deficit. $90 billion. So yes, if we're trying to stabilize debt to GDP, we want to run the most dovish monetary policy that we can without letting inflation become too much of a tax on the citizenry.
Money printers go burr. We know it's coming. And they have to. There's no other option. There's no other way out of this. We look at interest rates right now, historical perspectives, not too bad. They're way too high for the amount of debt the government is holding. the business sector is holding and then the everyday household, they're going to have to go back to wildly easy money because it's the only option. And even with that, there's probably going to be a lot of turmoil. All right, we have Raoul Pal here. And I don't totally agree with him. I mean, in some ways, much of crypto is down so much that when we get to the funny zone here that's coming, that's just around the corner, when everything's going crazy, yeah, you're probably going to get some better returns from assets outside of ETH. But I don't think it's going to underperform per se. But let's hear what he has to tell us.
Blockchain economy overall is not able to use the amount of capacity that Ethereum has built. But if the blockchain economy really grows in the next cycle, then ETH captures a huge amount because of this gigantic multivariant scalability. That's kind of what's in my head, and I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think this cycle ETH underperforms, but it might be the next cycle that reverses.
First of all, I partially disagree, partially agree. First and foremost, it's already got an ETF. And that's going to go crazy. I know the inflows haven't been what we've seen with Bitcoin, but when the crazy times happen, I think you're going to see a lot of inflows hitting ETH. People starting to get comfortable with altcoins in general. I think, we just heard Sony's going live with the layer 2, BlackRock. You're going to have a lot of major companies that go this route. It's an easy route to go. They're going to build their blockchain strategy on Ethereum or Ethereum layer 2. You even seen competitors, or traditionally what you'd think of as competitors like Ripple, deciding, you know what, we want to be part of that ecosystem as well. Issuing their stablecoin there, you just have to. It's part of business. And so I still think this is going to be a very productive cycle, but they may capture ungodly amounts of value in the next cycle. And if there's any blockchain that's going to stumble, that's going to cough up its lead, that's going to get run down, it would be Ethereum because it has the most competition. Every smart person in the world is running after layer 1 smart contracts because you capture everything. We talk about all the value a lot of times on this channel. That's all the value. DeFi, NFT, everything you could think of to build in the future, this kind of encapsulates that. So yeah, Ethereum could mess up in a big way. And there's we can go over in future videos, a lot of ways where this could go wrong. Too much stuff going on layer 2s, not enough hitting the main chain. It could cause a lot of disruption. But, if you have every Fortune 500 company going live, settling onto Ethereum, who knows what that looks like. So it's one of those ones, I think, if you feel you're too late to it, especially once this current cycle's over and things kind of settle back down to earth, I think it's one you have to pay attention to and have a part of your portfolio, and just like Bitcoin, because the upside over time could be ridiculous for this blockchain.
And I think a lot of the issues that the ecosystem is facing is interoperability and the UI experience. And now that the ecosystem is much more focused on that, I think that gets solved. And so we come out of this cycle into the next cycle. And by the way, this cycle, we will see more large corporates, Web 2 type companies coming on and probably choosing an Ethereum L2 to operate.
It kind of, to me, it's like, it's Microsoft. It's like you don't get fired for using Ethereum. You can build on the layer 2s. You got plenty of scale. It kind of works. And then whether it's between Solana, Sui, stuff like that, we're building some sort of Apple ecosystem.
Yeah. Maybe Microsoft, Microsoft at the end of in the 2010s, right? Everyone loved to hate it, and then it caught up, and then it just blew out. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly.
I remember Microsoft in those days. Stock was doing nothing. You got some little partially, dividend. Man, I wish I had still the Microsoft I had back then. Probably wouldn't be making YouTube videos or worried about cryptocurrencies. What I look for this run is one chain or maybe a few chains emerging that join Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of in a similar status of where they are, where they're not just massive bleeders in the bear market, that they have long sustainable value. Could that be something like the XRP ledger? Could it be Solana, Sui, Cardano, Polkadot? I don't know. None of those are there yet, but by the time we're done with this growth phase, could they be there? I know a lot of people are already crowning Solana, but wasn't that long ago that thing was in the dust. That thing was in the dirt. We're going to have to see us go through really a bear market where it holds up quite well to that pressure and continues to build through it. I think someone's going to emerge for sure out of this bear market and kind of join those other chains. Which one it is, I don't know. We'll see this kind of play out, and we should get a better sense as we work through this growth phase right now, who really starts capturing a lot of that value. Only time will tell. Let me know what you think down below. Oh, one more thing I want to bring up. You probably see me tweeting memes, meme coins and things on X. I just want to make this clear. I don't personally have an investment in any meme. I'm not shilling meme investments to my followers. I just think it's fun. I think it's cool. I like people are using the XRP ledger for something. To me, to see those transactions light up and the AMM pools, and I think it's an indicator of something in the future, and I think it's a lot of fun, really cool. I just don't jump into it right now because it's gambling, and I don't want to promote that to people per se. You're free to gamble. I think it's great if you want to do that. I don't want to be one of those annoying XRP community dads that has to lecture everyone. People should be free to do whatever they want with their money that they deem fit. That's the whole point of blockchain. And so, yes, I'm having fun on X and things like that. But just to be clear, I don't have a position in any meme coin at this point in time. I'm not promoting anyone invests in them for an investment purpose, but it sure can be a lot of fun. It can be a fun gamble. If I ever get in one, maybe I'll talk about it. Maybe I won't. But, that's all it is. It's just gambling. Let me know what you think down below. As always, please like, please subscribe. The revolution will be televised right here on Jungle Inc.